everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Our live team coverage of today's Election Day results starts right now at 10. Polls closed an hour ago. We have a team of reporters and political experts standing by and a lot of people behind the scenes working to get you all the results that are scrolling at the bottom of your screen. The votes, again, are still coming in. They're still being added up. But here are some of the key races that we're seeing right now. You can see that with 65% of precincts reporting, incumbent Mayor Byron Brown is way ahead, as expected, with 72% of the votes. Let's go to the next panel now here. You can see the race for Erie County Sheriff, too. You can see that current Sheriff Timothy Howard has 59% of the vote, with just 7% of precincts reporting. The Democratic challenger is Bernie Tolbert with 41%. All right, to the next race we go. Erie County Clerk Stephen Cishon has 42% of the vote. Mickey Kearns has 58% of the vote. Mickey Kearns was the favorite, but there is only 7% of precincts reporting. And finally, we want to look at the Amherst supervisor race. With 9% of precincts reporting, you can see that Marjorie Yeager is ahead by a slight margin with 51% of the votes. Brian Kulpa has 49% of the votes. We want to go live first now to Callan Gray, who is at the Democratic headquarters. Callan, good evening.
Good evening, Alina. I was looking away for a second because Erie County Sheriff candidate Bernie Tolbert just arrived here at headquarters. We've been anxiously awaiting his arrival here. As you mentioned, he is up against incumbent Sheriff Republican Tim Howard, who has been serving since 2005. This has been a very contentious race. Attack ads launched from both sides. Bernie Tolbert formerly was in security for the NBA. Before that, he spent more than 20 years working for the FBI, eventually becoming special agent in charge right here in Buffalo. He has criticized his opponent's leadership and said that more needs to be done in the fight against the opioid crisis, the number of people being killed by gun violence every year, among other issues. Now, his opponent, Sheriff Tim Howard, has said that there needs to be more done to create a relationship between the community and police. And he has said that in terms of the criticism he's faced for not doing enough in regards to the number of people who have died in the holding center, that people need to be careful of what they listen to, saying basically that some of the attack ads his opponent have aired have been false, that they are just making baseless claims. Earlier we talked to Erie County Democratic Committee Chair Jeremy Zellner, and this is what he had to say about the race.
There are some great people in the Sheriff's Department, and they lack a leader. And I think that's what Bernie Tolbert brings to the table. And it's time for change. It's been 12 years of mismanagement, 12 years of tragedy, 12 years of millions of dollars in lawsuits. We need a change.
Now, I keep refreshing my phone, checking the results, and with 33% of the districts reporting, Bernie Tolbert has 45% of the vote. His opponent, Sheriff Tim Howard, has 55% of the vote. And Alina, I want to loop right back to the race for Buffalo mayor. Incumbent Mayor Byron Brown is seeking a fourth term, and you had mentioned earlier that he is way ahead in the polls, but with 70% of districts reporting, I want to point out that Comptroller Schroeder has 22% of the vote, which is pretty incredible since he's running on the reform line, and he stopped campaigning after he lost to Mayor Byron Brown in the Democratic primary. Now, we will continue to follow all the developments here at Democratic headquarters at Statler City, and we'll bring you another live update in just half an hour. Reporting live, Callan Gray, News 4.
Callan, thank you. That's a great observation. Now, there were also a number of key issues on the back of the ballot. This includes 3 statewide ballot questions. Question 1 asked if you think New York State should have a constitutional convention. Right now, it looks like a lot of people don't want that to happen. You can see with 18.96% of precincts reporting, 70% of people say no, and I believe it's 18% of people say yes. It's been 50 years since New Yorkers wanted to hold a convention. Next question. Question 2 deals with whether the state can reduce or even revoke public pensions for public officers who are convicted of a felony related to their job. Right now, you can see I'm not sure how many precincts are reporting because our graphic did not update, but you can see that 58% of people say yes, that should happen. 29% of people across the state do not think they should be able to. I'll try to get how many precincts are reporting. And finally, question 3 would authorize the use of Adirondack Forest Preserve for projects like bike paths, utility work, and road repairs. Right now, you can see that it's pretty close. 40% of people say yes, 45% of people say no. Again, it's not updating to show how many percent of precincts are reporting, but we'll keep updating you throughout the show. And when I get a second, if I had more hands, I'd look at more computers here, but I'll get back to you on that one. Now, we want to continue our live team coverage with News 4's Jen Shantz. She's live at Republican headquarters. Jen is following the legislature races, which could change the balance of power depending on how these races end up. Right now, Republicans, Jen, we all know, control it. What's the latest?
That's absolutely right, Nalina. And although we're still, as you mentioned, just counting those votes, GOP County Chair Nick Langworthy says he is cautiously optimistic. But keep in mind, the GOP has some challenges going into this evening. In an off-year election, voter turnout is generally low, and Democratic voters outnumber Republican voters in Erie County. But he says, again, at this juncture, he is cautiously optimistic. Now, some of the major races we've been keeping an eye on in terms of campaigns, we've been talking about the county clerk position. Republican candidate and current New York State Assemblyman Michael Kearns is facing off against Democratic newcomer and former newsman Steve C. Sean. Initial numbers, and again, these are just initial reports, are showing Kearns is leading with 58%. Another key race for the GOP, one we're looking at closely, is the 8th District Legislative seat. Nalina, that was the one you mentioned could potentially sway the GOP's current 6-5 majority. There's two-time Republican incumbent Ted Morton. He's a hardline conservative, and he's facing off against another Democratic newcomer, John Brusso. Langworthy isn't making predictions on that one, but initial numbers show Brusso ahead with 52% of the votes, but that's just with 13% reporting.
There's only 11 seats in the legislature, so this thing is never going to be a wide majority. It's always going to probably go 6-5. Probably a best case scenario for the GOP ever is 7-4. We're working hard to get to 7. I'm not making any bold predictions. That's in the hands of the voters of Erie County. We didn't quite know what to expect going into today, but we've prepared for everything.
And we are also watching the race for Erie County Comptroller. Republican incumbent Stephen Mahailu Jr. is leading strongly right now with 60% of the votes. That's with 34% reporting as of about 2.5 minutes ago. Again, these numbers are continuing to change. You can see them scrolling on the bottom of your screen. We will, of course, continue to keep you posted. One thing that the GOP chairman, Nick Langworthy, did mention is that right now some of those key suburbs for the party, Lancaster, Cheektowaga, are showing a higher voter turnout than they did in 2015. However, keep in mind that's not saying much because that was a record low turnout year for the party. Of course, all these races are fluid. We're keeping our eyes on them, and we'll have the latest numbers for you reporting tonight on News 4 at 10:30 and 11. Langworthy says he expects every major candidate, whether they're successful or not, to be up on that podium behind me and to address the crowd. For now, live from GOP headquarters at the Avant in downtown Buffalo, Jen Shantz, News 4 at 10. Melina.
Jen, thank you. And a quick update right now about the Constitutional Convention. New York voters have rejected the ballot measure calling for a constitutional convention. Again, they have rejected that ballot measure. We've been telling you a lot about that. Now, our election day coverage continues coming up in about 3 minutes. You can also find everything you need to know, including times and, or I should say, the updated results on our website. They're being tweeted out as well. I know all our reporters are tweeting them out. And keep checking our website, WIVB.com, for the latest election results. We're going to have two political analysts at 10:30, one Democrat, one Republican, breaking down what all this means for us in our everyday lives at 10:30. On the way still at 10, our forewarned weather team is tracking a big cool down, heading our way, including some snow, I believe. Kaylee, she has your full forecast. She's shaking her head. She'll be up next.